Oh, yeah, I'm going to tell you. He's talking about accessing metals, those kinds of things posthumously. Records are problematic. The St. Louis fire was a devastating fire. Bev actually got access to her dad. Her dad was in World War II. His records. In fact, to get access to those kinds of records, you have to send a letter, fill out a form. You have to be the child of or the spouse of.
Child. And after that,
our son wanted to access this material, and he could not, as the grandson of her dad, access the material. So Bev had to make the application for the stuff. But when his records came, copies of his records came, his records had survived the fire, but several of the papers around the edges, they were singed, implying to me that they were in some file cabinet somewhere, that fire raging around it, but it didn't burn them up. So those are cool to have. He also got copies of all of her dad's medals a couple of years ago.
and it has his name inscribed on it.
Yeah, which is really cool stuff. So you can still get these kinds of things, you just have to know how to do it. Shannon, can I ask you real quickly too? Sure. Somebody asked me earlier, what's a good way to get access if you're trying to find somebody in the family who is in the war? Where should they go on the internet? What's the best way to do?
You know, there's the draft records on Ancestry.com. There's a few other places to find them, but that's a good starting point. So at least you know where they signed up for the draft. Then, you know, each state. If you're in Missouri, they have complete records online of all of the soldiers, and they are still giving out the Missouri Medal for service. They found a cache of them from 1921-22, and still giving them out. Other states, it's sporadic. Kansas has some in the archives, but I will offer this. If somebody is wanting to find more about their ancestor, if you will give me your information, I do this for a lot of people. If you will write it down, your contact information and whatnot, I'll work with you and see if I can help you track your ancestor or loved one down.
Can I give them your cell phone number?
What's his name?
No guts, no glory, right?
You remember the name of the fellow that just spoke?
Shannon, somebody.
Give them your cell phone number. I'm looking for it.
Email.
Or email?
Email? Okay. It's SSKELLY at totalspeed, TOTALSPEED.net. SSKelly at totalspeed.net.
About the transition. How did they get out of them so fast? And the other one is, what did they do with all the dirt?
Good question.
You're on my time now.
Okay, I'll make it snappy. Ladders, they had to go up one at a time over ladders that were spread out over the trenches. I should have mentioned that they were going up over ladders. And the dirt usually went into filling the bags, because the last 2 feet or so, because you didn't just want loose dirt being in front of you, they usually it was laden with sand, with what we call sandbags full of the dirt, and then some of it they just pitched behind them on the parative.
Yes, ma'am.
Tim, in Kansas, many men, when they came back from the service, recorded their discharge papers, and they can be found in the Register of Deeds office.
Kansas.
Yeah, that was where I spent many years.
Get on National Archives related. Go ahead.
It was for the bounty. There was a payment that was given out by the state of Kansas, and this is what I didn't want to go into too much detail, but they were given a certain amount of money for being a veteran. But they had to turn in their discharge papers to get it, and they still have those on file.
And so a lot of what was burned can be found in the Register of Deeds office.
Can you get on National Archives site and find anything as far as your family, your guy? Yeah.
Some.
Civil War a lot, you can on that.
It's spotty.
Yeah. Okay? Did that answer you? All right, we got to run here. You fight a war, what do you want to do? You want to win. That's the first obligation is to win. World War I is a world war. I haven't shown you this map until now. But this map is going to show you how worldwide this conflict was. Yes, there's a lot of concentration of what happens here in the Western Front, Eastern Front, just in this area right here. And all the green nations here are going to be those connected to associated powers, so allies to us. We would say the allies. The orange is going to be the Central Powers, so Germany, Austria, the Turks, other places where you have colonies of these countries. This isn't about, per se, Africans. I'm going to go fight for Europe. This is a colonized nation, so they're going to fight on behalf of their colonizing power. So it is a worldwide phenomenon in terms of nations around the planet. Of course, remember, when we have these empires in Europe, they have colonial states that control, so colonial subjects, so sometimes those subjects get pulled into the war and wind up serving in various ways, sometimes in armed forces and sometimes as stevedores and just guys who drive trucks and all kinds of things. So just the same kind of way that we treated black troops here. We put guns in their hands very often. We had them serving these secretaries and serving kind of roles. We won the war. Even before we won the war, Woodrow Wilson, who did not want to go into this conflict, we said before, but once he did, once we win it, becomes the hero of the day. Now, before we win the war, he already had a plan for the peace. It's one thing to win a war. The point actually is, what do you do once you end the war? What's the peace bring you? Woodrow Wilson had a lot of ideas in mind about what that would mean. We know the name of his plan, don't we? That's part of it. That's one of the points. But he used the term points. How many? 14. 14 is 14 points. You see them listed sort of here, 393 to 394. I don't want to go into a tremendous amount of detail here, but I do want us to note some of these. So in terms of identifying that he is suggesting we might actually be able to avoid war in the future. Really, would he? Yes. He really thought that might be possible. And from his perspective here, as he creates his 14 points, which, by the way, you'll see at the top right on 393, he has these in place by January of 1918. We've hardly fought in a single battle. He already is planning the peace. It's not even sure we're going to win in January of 1918. He wasn't even sure we're going to win in August of 1918. But he puts the plan out there, presents it to Congress. It's a very well-known plan, again, even before the war is over. I think that's crucial. I'll tell you why in just a second. Let's look at some of these points. Look at the bottom of the last half of the right half, 393. Point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These first 5 are basically, these are him saying, here are the problems that caused World War I. Let's avoid these things in the future. If we're trying to avoid war in the future, let's avoid the causative factors for war. And that's not a bad idea. Point 1, let's get rid of secret diplomacy, secret treaties. We saw how that can mess you up, draw you into a war against nations you didn't realize you're going to be fighting against. But let's make all treaties public so we know who's allied to whom. Not a bad idea, would you? The second one, freedom of the seas. We know that this U-boat business is partially why we got pulled into the war, and it creates kind of villainous aura about Germany that we kind of identify today. So let's freedom of the high seas. Let's have neutral access to the high seas. Good point. Remove the trade barriers here at the bottom of the page. Those kinds of rivalries for trade, colonies, and markets, coaling stations. Let's bring in that kind of stuff. Let's not have embargoes, those kinds of things. Let's not have tariffs. Let's have free open trade. That way we're not really competing with each other. Well, good luck on that. Number 4, below his picture. Let's reduce arms. How idealistic is this guy? It's actually, he's calling for arms reduction. We have too many weapons. We were armed to the teeth before World War I. Let's cut back on that thing. Now, we see a little bit of that happening, by the way, especially, well, of course, we see a lot of it happening in Germany because we just crushed Germany. We'll talk about that in a sec. But we actually do have some naval ships destroyed in 1920s under Washington Naval Treaty to reduce the number of ships. They kept the same ratio, Navy to Navy. Okay, you with me? but reduced the number of ships. We actually scuttled ships. So something that does happen later on, after he's out of office. Number 5, let's put temporary international control over the colonies. Let's not have these international colonial rivalries. Let's place some temporary control over these colonies to take that out of the equation. So these are good points that he's making. These are the causative factors. I mean, look, those are the reasons why World War I developed. So let's get rid of those causative factors and maybe we can avoid war in the future. Well, we all get, don't we, that there are many reasons why war takes place. These just happen to be the causes for this war, which are not necessarily going to be the causative factors for the next war. So this is unfortunately a pie in the sky approach. Now, I don't blame you for trying. This isn't going to solve the problem of future wars. Then points 6 through 13. We'll just capsulize here very quickly. 6 through 13. Look, why did Woodrow Wilson say he wanted to go into the war? To make the world safe for democracy. We're going to broaden this out here in just a bit and kind of put meat on the bone. But what we're saying, what he's saying here is, look, as these European empires are being destroyed, look, if the Allies win, the German Empire is theoretically over, the Austrian Empire is theoretically over, the Turkish Empire has been defeated, of course the Russians are out by this time. But if we destroy empire, then what happens to all these places in Europe controlled by empire in the future? We can let these defeated nations hold on to all those folks? Well, no. What he's suggesting in points 6 through 13 is, let's create nation states, ethnic nation states for these people, these colonized people, say Serbs here, or Slavs here, or Poles here. Now they get their own country, their own place. Good idea? Not a bad idea. It's complicated. We'll see how in here in just a minute. So I'm going to come back to that, and we'll see how that's a nice idea. It's hard to carry out. We'll see why. All right. Number 14, of course, is League of Nations. You already referred to. League of Nations is hard to describe. I sometimes to my students say, kind of an earlier, kind of an international organization 1.0, and UN is 2.0. Does that make sense? It's an attempt basically to create a standing international body. Kind of international congress, but they've had congresses from time to time. There would be temporary meetings where these nations get together. They've been doing that for 150 years. What this is suggesting is a permanent seated Congress, international organization. These member nations can come together, talk about their problems, talk about all kinds of stuff, sit down together, deal with the issues, settle their problems, short of what? War. Great idea. Now, if you ask Woodrow Wilson, okay, Woody, are you really attached to the hip on all these? Oh, yeah. Okay, Woody, you can't have all these. You only get one. Well, I want all 14. Woodrow Wilson, unfortunately, is not a good compromiser. He's an all or nothing guy. He's kind of a my way or the highway kind of guy. He said, Woodrow, okay, you only get one, Woody. He said, I want all 14. No, you only get one. You're not listening. I only get one. You only get one. He would have said, all right, I want League of Nations. Which becomes one of the more ironic endings to World War I. You know what's going to happen, don't you, most of you? Are we going to join the League of Nations when it's formed? The American president creates the concept of League of Nations. The United States never joins it. We'll see some reasons in just a bit. Okay, the war is over. Oh, by the way, this isn't just handed off to Congress. Through 1918, this is printed off in Europe in multiple languages. You talk about planes in World War I. One of the things that planes in World War I did on the Allied side is they flew over places and dropped thousands of leaflets to the ground in places where these various ethnic groups live within the context of empire, and they're, oh wait, hey, they want a nation for just us. You see how they incentivize these folks to support the Allied side. So this was known stuff, again, long before the war was over. All right, war ends, last paragraph on 394, Armistice Day. We beat that dog to death, I think, at this point. But anyway, fantastic day here. Everybody, in America and, of course, other places, schools let out, factories let out, everybody's in the streets, little towns, big cities. cheering, crying, ringing church bells, fire engines in a little town like this run all over the square and around, and ringing the bells and all this, all the big stuff, because everybody's pretty excited about the end of the conflict. Woodrow Wilson will make a public statement at the very end of 394. Everything for which America has fought has been accomplished. Hang on, Woody. There's a lot still to do. Because you have ended the war, ended the shooting part of the war, does not mean you have established the peace. So Shannon said earlier, sometimes people say 1914, 1919, because of the negotiations at Versailles that had to take place to actually, technically, really end the war. You stop shooting in 1918, you don't really end the war until you establish the peace in 1919, which won't be until the summer of 1919. So, Woodrow Wilson will now leave the United States, which does not sound like any big deal to us because presidents leave American soil constantly. Woodrow Wilson will be the first American president to leave the Western Hemisphere during his presidency. Only one president previous to him had left the United States during his presidency. That was within the Western Hemisphere. Who was that?
Thomas Jefferson.
Nope. No, he was in France when he was not president. He never left the country.
Roosevelt?
Theodore Roosevelt, 2 presidents earlier. Theodore Roosevelt had gone to Panama while he was president to go check on how his canal was coming along. That was his baby. If League of Nations was Wilson's baby, the Panama Canal was Theodore Roosevelt's baby. But he went down to Panama and pretended he could run a steam engine and all kinds of stuff. So he's the first guy to ever leave the country. I mean, think about that. We are so accustomed to the President of the United States flying off to all parts of the planet. We don't give a second thought. Woodrow Wilson will be the first one to leave the Americans. Sail to Europe, not fly, sail to Europe. On a troop transport called the George Washington. He will arrive in France. If you want to flip back, by the way, to the intro for this material, we skipped over these first 3 pages. The other day I said we'd come back to them. Here we are. Woodrow Wilson is the hero of the day. The Americans, in some respects, are the heroes of the day. Everybody understands that they took us over the top when it comes to the end of the war. Contributions crucial. When he goes to Europe, he's, of course, representing us. And you talk about a hero's welcome. I'm going to guess no president has ever been received by foreigners the way Wilson will be here in late 18 into 19. It's incredible stuff. We see, see this photo here. Here he is walking down. I don't know where he is here with other Allied leaders. And look at all these little girls throwing flowers, and like he's getting married, throwing flowers in front of flowers everywhere.
American flags.
American flag flying. Yeah, all the Allied flags flying. You can see over on page 375, you'll be in these parades and carriages. Talk about horses in the war. He's still in the carriages here. Going down the streets of Paris, you see things like this. This is Paris. Viva Wilson! Thousands and thousands of people lining the streets, waiting to just get a glimpse of Woodrow Wilson. You see these phrases used describing him. These welcome signs that I'm on 375. Welcome to the God of peace. It's an ego trip, I would think. It would be for me. The Savior of humanity. I mean, there's almost these Jesus Christ images that they create about this guy. He is Jesus to these people. I mean, not literally, but you know what I mean. He saved them from the Huns. In one of these parades, when he's going down the streets of Paris, you will have just wherever his carriage passes, thousands of people would just be hollering, Wilson, Wilson, Wilson. They're just so excited about it. Girls will rush up to the carriage, throw in flowers. By the time he's at the end of the parade, he almost literally would be covered up with flowers to the neck. You know, the French. All right. Yes, sister. Let's get him over there.
I just want to know that he had any fear of being in those type of crowds.
Not that I'm aware of. I don't do anything like that. No. Probably never dawned on him that there'd be an enemy in the group. I mean, you know, Franz Ferdinand aside, I don't know, he didn't go to Sarajevo, but anyway. All right, he winds up out at Versailles. We all know about Versailles. Versailles is the old Louis XIV palace, 17th century. Everybody been there? So I'm sure you guys did. Big, huge, long, half-mile long, complex, beehive system with rooms, halls, and meeting rooms. It's just incredible stuff. All kinds of things. Louis made that about. But anyway, about the biggest place in outside, of course, it's outside Paris, to get all these people. Because look, when we had the negotiations here, this isn't just about, you know, a few Germans and Americans and French. There's thousands of people out there. When we got a war that involves all these folks, you know, all these nations, there's a lot of people there. Thousands of people there. Nations all on the planet, multiple. Look, this is complicated. The logistics of Versailles Conference is just a mess because there's not enough cars, there's not enough telephones, there's not enough typewriters, the language problems. I mean, think about how easy it is for us today to translate languages, just electronic. They can't do that. People from the Middle East are there, people who speak Arabic are there. I mean, even if you had a typewriter, it's not going to type in their language. So you've got to hand translate stuff, and it's just a really a mess. Really, you look at the details, it's just really kind of, it's odd they got anything done at all. All these folks that have to show up. This is the Hall of Mirrors, Versailles. Windows here, mirrors on the opposite side, reflecting the sun, any day and stuff. Thousands of people. This doesn't even show everybody in the ring who was there, by the way.
You remember being there?
You get people come from all over. This is King Faisal of Saudi Arabia. The Arabs had stayed loyal to the British. Why? Because of that guy right there, Lawrence of Arabia. His story is a fascinating story. An archaeologist turned spy, turned diplomat, turned gun runner. There's a lot of things going on. By the way, there's also another version of this photograph. Some historians think it's been doctored to take out one person who's also there. I have my doubts about this one. I thought it was funny. The Big Four right here. That's what they call it, the Big Four. British Prime Minister David Lloyd George, the man with 3 first names. This is Clemens. This is Orlando. Yes, this is Orlando from Italy. This is Clemenceau from France, and then the tall, lanky kid on the right is going to be Woodrow Wilson. These are the 4, and I hate to say it this way. It sounds very Eurocentric, and to a great extent, this conference is going to be very Eurocentric. These are the 4 important guys in the room. There are a lot of meetings, in fact, where these 4 guys are the only guys in the room. Now, as they sit down together, they are not going to really be together on a lot of things. Woodrow Wilson went to Europe with high anticipation, a lot of just a sheer anticipation that this is going to go his way. The 14 points, already well known. They'd all sit down and say, Woodrow, this is the greatest thing we've seen ever. We're going to sign up on, where do we sign? Where do we sign? This is all great stuff. I'm not going to do that. What happens at Versailles is very typically 3-1. These Europeans who have been in this conflict either from the beginning or since 1915, they're not going to abide by the kinds of things that he's wanting. They just simply don't agree. Remember when I started on Monday, I said there had not been a generalized war, large-scale war in Europe for almost literally a century, 1815 and 1914. I said why, too. In the Napoleonic Wars, the Congress of Vienna, the Europeans did it right in terms of the balance of power. That way they could avoid a large-scale war for, again, literally a century. They don't do that here. What they did so well at the Congress of Vienna, they failed to do here at Versailles. Now we're going to get, again, kind of make that make more sense here in just a second. One of the things that they do, and I'm paraphrasing a lot of stuff, there's a lot more than what I'm giving you, but this is crucial stuff. One of the things that they do is they take points 6 through 13 pretty seriously. All four of them do. What they're going to do here, because remember, when we started the war with 5 empires, we're going to emerge out of the war with how many? 1. The Germans have been defeated. The Austrians have been defeated. The Turks have been defeated. The Russians have been defeated. Bless their hearts, the Russians just did miserably in World War I. They were under-industrialized, they didn't have enough guns. You had men who went to the front in Russia with no gun at all. You had men who, before battles, would be issued 3 bullets and told, make them last. That's your day quota. You're not going to win. For every 1 Russian machine gun at the front, there are 8 German machine guns. There's no way. They're out of the war. The point being, in context of the revolutions, this empire has been crushed too. In the aftermath of empire, then you must redraw the borders of Central and Eastern Europe. And that's what you're seeing here. So Germany's been defeated. Austria, I mean, look at the map. As these guys carry out points 6 through 13, they are redrawing the borders of Eastern and Central Europe. That's a tough game to play. This is hard. Instead of throwing dart at the board, this is hard. These guys will literally meet together, the 4 of them, big room with huge maps on the floor, and they will literally crawl around like boys on hands and knees as they redraw the map of Europe. They are redrawing the map of Europe to make home for people who have been held within empire previously. In other words, the Poles, the Slovaks, the Lithuanians, the Czechs, the Serbs, not Serbs, the Slavs, the Estonians, all these folks and more, who didn't have a nation state of their own. Maybe never had. Maybe hadn't had one in hundreds of years. And if they had, nobody really knew exactly what those original borders were. So when you are down on your hands and knees redrawing the borders of Europe, you mean to do it well, you mean to do it right. But in effect, what these guys are doing, they're creating artificial nation states based on what? Ethnicity. That's hard to do. By the way, one day, Woodrow Wilson's wife, he married again. Woodrow Wilson's first wife died in August of 1914. He will remarry later in 1915 to a woman named Edith Galt. We'll talk about her later on. Man, I've got to move fast. Yeah, okay, I've got to move fast. Go ahead.
What you mentioned about nation building, isn't that one of the problems we've got in the Middle East right now?
It is, and one thing to remember too here, I'm just showing you Europe, but they will also be redrawing part of the borders of the Middle East. Is that important for us today? You bet it is. There was not, the modern day state of Iraq as we know it did not exist before World War I. They created it, or recreated it. Syria, same way. Look, we can go to our Old Testament, see Syria. The modern day nation state of Syria, with the borders it has today, didn't exist before World War I. They redraw the map. Does that matter to us today? You bet it does. You bet it does. Because in some respects, they're creating artificial nations. And when you base a nation on ethnicity, here's, I don't want to get too deeply into this. But look, they're trying to create, there are 2 forms of nations basically today. An ethnic nation, obviously based on ethnicity, I don't want to say race, but ethnicity. That can be about language, it can be about culture, heritage of your multifamily DNA, all that kind of stuff. Then you can have civic nations, which most nations are. The United States is which one? A civic nation. We have a nation based on laws and constitution and political systems, and it's not about race or ethnic background. We live in a melting pot, we all get that. When they're creating these nations here, they're creating them, trying to create them on the basis of ethnicity. Okay, let's say, for example, you're trying to create a new nation of Poland. There's been a Poland before. There have been lots of Polands before. But you're trying to draw a modern-day nation-state of Poland. For whom? Well, for the Poles. And as you do that, it gets real dicey, doesn't it? When you start drawing borders to include Poles, but not include anybody else. That's like separating gangly. You can't do it. Let's take, for example, this is a terrible example. Let's say for some silly reason, we wanted to take in the United States, we wanted to divide the United States, so we take part of the United States and separate it out into another country for black people. What part of the United States would we go to? We go to the south. We could start drawing a border, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, kind of recreate the Confederacy for another reason, but anyway. See what I'm saying? We could do that, and we'd create a nation with a lot of black people in it, wouldn't we? What's going to be the complicating factor? There's a lot of white folks there, and you're not going to get all of those black people either. Because we all get, don't we? There's black people everywhere. That's a terrible example. But for Americans, that's probably as good as I can get. See what I'm saying? This is all well-intended stuff. You take, for example, what it meant to be Austrian in 1940. We just see that, the word, and we think, well, okay, Austrian means those are Austrian people. Well, hang on. Within the Austrian Empire, when you talk about the Austrian Imperial Army, for every 100 men in the Imperial Army of Austria in 1914, there were 25 Germans, 18 Magyars, Hungarians, the original Hungarians, 13 Czechs, 11 Serbs and Croats, 9 Poles. I don't even know what a Ruthenian is. Anybody know? Okay. 9 of them. 6 Romanians, 4 Slavs, 2 Slovenes, and a couple of Italians. Somebody's got to cook. Even to say an Austrian. Look, in some respects, it's like saying an American. What's that mean? If you're basing a nation on a civic nation, it doesn't have to mean anything. American is an artificial, political, citizenship-based term.
They were Eastern Slavic people.
Ruthenians are Eastern Slavic people. It looks like we got plenty of those anyway, but all right, it's fine. One more version of those buddies. So they're going to, let's go back to our map here. But they're going to try it. So out of the aftermath of these crushed empires, we're going to see now, well, you can't see Estonia, it's to the north, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland. Tell me if you see these nations on the left. Poland, brand new nation. Czechoslovakia had never existed before. I'm not even sure why they put the Czechs and the Slovaks in the same state, but anyway. Look at Austria. It's great to be emperor until you're not. Hungary separate out. That's probably one part about this the Austrians like. Now, Hungary was forced on Austria back in the 19th century. The Austrians always hated that. So Hungarians were always kind of dead weight to them. And they often functioned pretty separately from Austria. They had separate army, separate parliament, all kinds of stuff. So it's probably fine for the Austrians to cut that in. The separate, reduced Austria. We're going to lose some German land, not a lot, but some. We're going to lose some to East Prussia. Yeah, we're going to lose to Prussia. Yugoslavia, remember a lot of this started with all this business down here in the Balkan states. Now it's going to be Yugoslavia, land of the South Slavs, which doesn't even exist today. We're kind of back to this now. So the nation, well, I don't know how map makers keep up. Enlarge Romania. Again, well-intended stuff. It's problematic.
Real quick, we were in Albania in 2007, 2 weeks after George Bush had visited there. And there was lots of signs and lots of U.S. flags around still and all. And I was visiting with a friend and asked him why, they thought so much about the U.S. And it was Woodrow Wilson. He said they kept us from, he kept Greece from taking over.
Sucked up into somebody else's station.
Yeah.
Well, again, well-intended. You're not going to be able to do it surgically. One of the mile marker points that takes us into World War II, we all know, are going to be these issues in Eastern Europe, especially Germany has about, and even Russia to a point, so Soviet Union to a point, about, well, wait a minute, this land should actually be ours. Was and should be now. Germans especially. What about Czechoslovakia? Remember back in '38, Hitler said, look, we got too many Germans here in Czechoslovakia, Sudetenland, Czechoslovakia. You drew the board in the wrong place. And he's not necessarily wrong. And of course, he'll kick the cat and beat the table, and the British and the French will sit down with him, negotiate in Munich, and say, okay, you can have Sudetenland. Of course, this is just one more step to him moving into Czechoslovakia, moving to Poland, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Tim, the little piece of ground that left Poland, Germany, up there at the top.
Left in Lithuania.
here,
Yeah, that's what I was talking
Okay.
about. The Germans were quick to take that.
yeah,
Beginnings of the Second World War.
East Prussia, yeah, they wanted that back. Yeah, that's theirs. That's theirs. And that hadn't, well, maybe in medieval context, it might have been Polish, but not in the modern context. So look, they're trying something that's just hard to do. Again, did I finish? Did I tell the story already? Moving faster. Woodrow Wilson's wife came in one day and saw him crawling on the floor on the ground. Did I say that already?
No.
Okay. His new wife came in one day and they were on their hands and knees, of course in their coats, and, vest and all, watch fobs dragged from the ground and everything. And she said, you guys look like you boys. She said, you men look like boys playing a game. They're shooting marbles. And Woodrow Wilson turned around and said, if we are playing a game, it has the most serious of consequences. And he's right. Look, this is, again, I keep saying well intended. It is well intended. This is about democracy to him. This is about establishing republics to him. Prior to World War I, there were only 3 republics in Europe. The French, Portuguese, Portugal. What's the third? Is it Switzerland? Let's say Switzerland. After World War I, there's 13. Most all of them have been in these nations that have now been established or reestablished in the modern post-war context. We all get, don't we, that because of what they're doing here, World War II is going to be just about inevitable. I'm not pointing fingers and blaming, I'm just saying it is what it is. One thing does lead to another. Yes, ma'am?
My husband was Polish, and I remember him saying, the big thing they learn in Poland is how to switch sides.
One thing in Poland you learn is how to switch sides. Somebody else said that, not me. All right, we're going to blast through some of the rest of this here really quickly. Look, at Versailles, the 3 allies minus Wilson are going to blame Germany for just about all of the war. They're going to hang that on Germany. That's another reason for World War II. Germany gets prostrated. Again, not a balance of power here. It gets crushed down to absolute zero. Its military reduced to 100,000 men. Its ships are going to be almost all destroyed. Was it 11 or something? You can't defend Albania with 11 ships. But anyway, all the submarines destroyed, all these kinds of things. I mean, Germany just gets crushed. Fairly or unfairly, and I think unfairly, Germany is not the single cause of the fact of World War I, but it's treated that way. Woodrow Wilson gets very frustrated. He will leave the conference at one point, come back. He actually wanted to leave for good. Talked him back into it. He came back, negotiate to the end. He's desperate to have the League of Nations. Knowing that back here, before the treaty is even completed, he knows he's got an uphill climb back here in the States. We're so accustomed to the United States taking a leadership role internationally, it wouldn't even dawn on us that we might not want to do that. But most Americans at the end of World War I are not particularly interested in the United States taking a really significant, large-scale international leadership role. We do not want to get pulled into future European conflicts. We perceive that if we join the League of Nations, we might run the risk of getting pulled into later conflicts. The Republican Party in 1919 is not going to do this. Henry Cabot Lodge, as the de facto leader of the Republican Party, is going to say we're not in. Once this treaty is all completed, he'll come back with this. He will try to sell it. It never happens. We never sign off on the Versailles Treaty. We'll see this on Friday, we will actually have to negotiate years after the war, or 3 or 4 years after the war, separate treaties with all the nations we were at war with. Technically, the war doesn't end for us till the 1920s. So it is what it is. Now, Woodrow Wilson doesn't give up easily. He will carry out a campaign on the latter of summer months, summer weeks, early fall of 1919. He will do a stumping campaign all around the country, traveling by train. He will give speech after speech after speech, it's all the same speech, telling Americans, we need this, we need to be part of this, we need to have the Senate ratify this treaty, we need to be part of the League of Nations. Cable your senators, send them a telegram, make sure they're on board, this kind of stuff. He will wear himself out. He almost kills himself. In Pueblo, Colorado in October, he will collapse with a stroke, a very debilitating stroke. It will affect the left side of his body almost completely. He's virtually immobile. He can't speak. He's non-functional. That ends his campaign, and it ends the dream of the League of Nations and the United States being any part of international leadership.
Wasn't that all partisanship?
It is, but it also reflects the will of the people at the same time. Most Americans do not want us to go this direction. So he is just going to be a man out of his step in that respect. I mean, as much as people supported the war itself, when we were done, their view was, we're done, we're out. We're not going to stay in. Yeah, we're out. He will never recover. I know I'm on borrowed time. Give me one more minute. This is October of 1919. His second term isn't over until March of 1921, and he's almost non-functional. For a year and a half, he virtually could not speak, or barely could. He did not appear in public. We're not even sure he can even write his own name. His second wife will serve unofficially as president, petticoat president, some people refer to her as. Look, you could be in Congress or a senator, and you could have a piece of legislation, you need him to sign. You can go to the White House, be ushered in, she would come downstairs, what do you need? And, well, we need him to sign this bill into law. Well, I'll take that, I'll be right back. Just, Bob, can you give this man a drink? They would say, yeah, I'll be right back. She goes upstairs. She comes back downstairs. Here you go. With a scrawly signature on it. Or, no, he's chosen not to sign this. Everybody okay with that? This is crazy stuff. Constitutionally, this is complicated, to say the least. So a lot of criticism here. What Woodrow Wilson should have done is step down, at least temporarily. He chose not to. I think that's a mistake. I think it just complicates things, just muddies the waters. Oh gosh, I don't even know. Yeah, you would anticipate, yeah, but the Constitution did not deal with it directly at that time, so it's really best said. So this is it's not good. All right, I know I'm borrowed time. I'll kind of pick up with that when I come back on Friday. This war does not end as neatly as he hoped.